There's gonna be a... Oh, okay, fuck.
20 minutes later.
Oh my god. What? Yeah, I think it's time we had a little talk about this part in Resident Evil Village. So real quick before the video starts, I want to point out that all the footage you're seeing is captured from my stream of Resident Evil Village. So about a month ago, I've since started streaming on Twitch. And in total, I've done 2 streams where I play drums to songs and whatnot, which is something that I've had a ton of fun doing. And completely on a whim, I decided to pick up from my last save point in Resident Evil Village and stream the game for a couple of hours, see how it would go. And unfortunately, I wound up having some microphone issues where the noise gate and the compressor was turned up way too loud, which resulted in half of my sentences getting cut off if I wasn't speaking loud enough. But that has now since been addressed, and completely unbeknownst to me, I wound up streaming not only the scariest part in this game, but what is inarguably also one of the most terrifying things I have ever witnessed in a video game. So much so that by the end of my stream, this is what I had to say about it. That might actually have been one of the coolest sequences I have ever seen in a video game. I'm not forgetting about that anytime soon. Jesus Christ, that was terrifying. So although I personally never played Resident Evil 7, one of the most common complaints I've seen level against Resident Evil Village is the fact that it pales in comparison to its predecessor in terms of horror. And that's likely due to the fact that developer Capcom decided to put all of their eggs into one basket and make an entire level that's primarily centered around horror, and then make the rest of the game more action-oriented. And that seems to have paid off in spades, seeing how this chapter of Resident Evil Village is destined to go down in history as being one of the scariest sequences in any Resident Evil game to date. When it comes to horror in video games, the best way to scare the player is by way of unpredictability. So when you have a game like Resident Evil Village that starts off in one way and then takes a completely different turn not long after the first chapter, then the scares are bound to be enhanced tenfold. So trust me when I say that when I first set foot in House Beneviento in this game, then nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to witness in the 2 hours that it took me to beat this chapter. That in hindsight I easily could have been in around 20 to 30 minutes or so, but due to my own stupidity and not being able to solve puzzles all that quick, not to mention the fact that I pretty much paused the game every 2 seconds because I was so startled by the sound design, then yeah, you can imagine how terrified I was. This chapter in the game works on so many different levels for a multitude of different reasons. First of all, the game completely, without warning, strips you of your weapons, and then forces you to do things that are genuinely terrifying. This includes performing a full-on autopsy of a doll that bears a striking resemblance to Ethan's dead wife, to being forced to navigate tight corridors and hallways where you swear you're seeing something, but you can't pinpoint exactly what. And that's not even mentioning all the ambience you're being subjected to, as doors are being slammed shut all around you, you hear footsteps around you and things falling down from the ceiling. It is absolutely unnerving. I cannot sing enough praise about the sound design. The sound design in this game is incredible. I can just hear everything like happening around me. How long have I been streaming for? And talk about a sequence that understands the importance of build-up, as when you first set foot in this house, you're well aware that something is going to happen when you least expect it. But even so, on my first playthrough, I most definitely did not expect this. He's coming. Look at that big blobber. This is the most terrifying shit I have witnessed in years. But even as I came to terms with the fact that yes, this is a giant monster fetus that's chasing me and will happily swallow me whole if I'm not careful, the game even had the nerve to do this to me. Ah! Like, I can't. This is... Because the thing about House Beneviento is that it's actually a dollhouse, and where you are forced to come face to face with a possessed doll that forces you to play a twisted version of hide and seek, where the goal is to find her 3 times before stabbing her in the eye socket, in what plays out in a completely non-violent form of a boss fight. That's really creative and a beautiful palate cleanser after all of the unnerving horror you've been subjected to up until this point. Once you kill her, you get the flask you needed in order to progress, the door opens, and you are free to leave and never to look back ever again. When the dust finally settled on this chapter, I was a little bit disappointed to find that the remainder of Resident Evil Village never quite lives up to this level of tension and horror, as the rest of the game plays out like a mostly atypical survival horror action game with a key focus on action. But in spite of a noticeably weaker second half, I'm still wholeheartedly willing to recommend Resident Evil Village based solely on its first 2 chapters, which is Resident Evil at its absolute finest. House Beneviento is everything I've ever appreciated about horror in video games. It's unpredictable and scary, strips me of all my means of defending myself, has a long, massive build-up complete with a massive crescendo, and everything from the art style to the sound design, the atmosphere, the lighting, and the way this chapter makes you second guess everything you hear and see had me reveling for hours on end when this chapter was finally over. Resident Evil Village is by no means a perfect game, but I'll be damned if I wind up forgetting about this part of this game anytime soon. Thank you for watching. Oh. That was a sound. That was a door opening.